The square wakes in a blue hush. A bell coughs once, then again, and the sound climbs the cold stones of Milan's castello. A boy with ink-stained fingers runs past a line of spearmen. Their pikes tilt like a forest caught by wind. The iron bites his shoulder. Bakery smoke threads the air. Hooves drum on the cobbles, slow and heavy, as a rider under a black and silver banner lifts his visor, and the city, bruised by years of hunger and fear, holds its breath. Open, he says. Not loud, not harsh, just certain. Behind him, wagons of grain, barrels of lime, coils of rope, the stuff of war, and the bones of a future. At that gate stands the riddle of a century. Is power a sword or a plan? The answer will be written by the House of Sforza, mercenaries who bought a duchy with courage, contracts, and an engineer's patience. The wind smells of flour and iron. The gates begin to swing. Somewhere, a prayer folds into a promise, like the quiet turn of a gear. Let your hand linger. Like, subscribe, and follow this story deeper into the heart of Milan. Iron and silk. The road to Milan shivers under iron. Frost has salted the ruts white, and the horses breathe clouds into a dawn the colour of cold tin. At the front rides Francesco Sforza, leather stiff with last night's rain, a map folded flat against his saddle like a stubborn bird. He is not the tallest man in the company, but the eyes make him seem so watchful, weighing, counting trees and bridges, as if each were a coin. He holds the road as a smith holds a bar, turning it, testing its heat, preparing to strike. 3 miles to water, he says, and a page rides off, cloak flapping, to let the baggage know. Behind, men on foot hum low, an old song that keeps their steps together. The rhythm helps when hunger bites. Canvas tents, still damp, sway on wagons. The smell is wet wool, horse sweat, and the sour breath of last night's onions. They are hired to break a ring around a city. Milan, powerful and stubborn, strangled by men who have measured its grain and counted its days. The price is promised, as always, in words more golden than the coin to come. Condottieri live on contracts and caution. Francesco knows both. He has read the Latin of notaries by firelight, lips moving to hold each clause like a nail. He has learned how to read faces too. The hand that fidgets when it lies, the jaw that tightens when fear is near. War is a market with dust in its teeth. He rides through it choosing. A rider catches him panting. A message sealed in blue wax and bound in silk lands in his hand. He breaks the seal with his thumbnail and reads as he rides. Ink neat as threads. Bianca Maria Visconti, daughter of a duke, writes with a tone as exact as a straight stitch. Francesco, the bakeries are empty by noon. There were fights in the fish market. If you must sell your sword, sell it to me for bread first. Trust the ledger. Distrust the smile. Burn this. He looks up, finds a flame in the brazier of the nearest cart, and the letter goes to smoke, but the words hold. A man can wear armour. A city wears a list. Wheat, salt, tools, men. That list is a spine. Without it, armies bend and break. At dusk, they camp among pollard willows, their cropped heads like fists against the sky. Sparks from the cook fires snap and ride the dark. A tailor sergeant, needle between his teeth, mends a torn banner with a length of pale silk taken from a merchant who tried to short the weights. The silk gleams even in the smoke. A soft thread for a hard day, he says, pushing the needle through greasy cloth. Around him, men rub their feet, curse gently, share crusts, share lies. A boy coughs himself empty and sleeps. In the officer's tent, a clerk with a scar where his eyebrow should be opens the accounts and reads them aloud, the way a monk might read a prayer. Oil, 50 casks. Arrows, 8,000. Bread, not enough. The numbers have a sound to them, like small stones raining on tin. Francesco eats little, then walks away from the firelight to feel the night. Somewhere a river licks its banks. Somewhere a barn owl trades a mouse for silence. He thinks of his father, Musio Attendolo, Sforza, the striker, who left a plough for a spear and taught his son that a man cannot sleep on honour. You sleep on hay or on the ground. You sleep with your boots partly unlaced so you can run if the fire starts. He remembers a beating he took as a foster boy in a hard house, and how the woman who mended him whispered, "Count what you can move." He smiles at the old lesson. He will move this siege. He will move a city. Morning brings fog, and a messenger from the walls, face chapped, hands shaking from cold and fear and the speed of his ride. They starve, he says. The old are silent now. The young are loud. Some want to open the gates to the wrong banner. He hands over a strip of parchment signed by 3 guild heads and a priest. It is not a contract in the notary's sense, but it has weight. The city is leaning toward the man who can feed it without selling its spine. Francesco folds it into his map. Tell them to hold 1 more day, he says. Tell them to hang lanterns at midnight where the old north ditch meets the carp ponds. He has walked the land. He knows the ditch is silted, knows the carp ponds feed into a narrow run that a man might widen with spades and quiet work. He sends a squad forward with picks wrapped in cloth, shovels muffled. Under the fog they move like patient ghosts. The plan is simple and exact. Dig a tooth for the river to bite, flood a segment of the blockade, turn pikes to sticks in the mud. Not a charge, not a shout. Water and gravity and timing like a held breath. War is a machine, he tells his captains, but it can be turned by men who know where to place the lever. At noon, as if nothing matters but warmth, he orders the huge kettles set and the beef boiled. Onion, bay, a handful of barley. The smell reaches out into the fog. Men in the siege lines lift their heads like dogs. A gift, says a lieutenant, smirking. An insult, answers a veteran and grins. Francesco sends wooden bowls on cartwheels up toward the enemy fires under a flag of truce. For the hungry, he says, loud enough for both sides to hear. We will trade soup for silence. On a field where pride likes to scratch and spit, the trick lands soft. Stomachs win. For 3 hours, quarrels shrink. Rumour sleeps. Under that brief blanket, the spades bite harder. Toward evening, Bianca's next letter slips into camp, creases still warm from a hidden pocket. I have told the bakers to keep back flour and the millers to say nothing. The bells wait. The women have salted water in every pot. If the river comes, it will find us ready. She writes of small things. A midwife who refuses to take payment from a wife whose husband is away. A stonemason who works by moonlight to set a cracked gate back true. A child who pulled 2 eels from a water stair with a needle tied to a string. These details do not look like power until they are assembled. He can see the assembly. He writes back on the back of a broken tally, trust the ditch, trust the hour, burn this. The night falls in layers, smoke, fog, wet wool, until each man is his own small planet of breath. The lanterns hang at the carp ponds like waiting eyes. The first trickle is nothing, the second whispers. The third begins to talk. A cartwheel sinks, a tent rope shudders. In the far dark, a captain of the siege swears at the cold and steps wrong. Water grips his boot and does not let go. Men shout, but shouts carry poorly in fog. Now, says Francesco, and lights point where men should push. The flood is not grand. It will not be painted on a wall. It is work, and it is enough. By dawn, the blockade's right wing has sagged into a low lake of bad decisions. In the new light, a hawk hangs over the field, the only free thing in the sky. The bells do not sing. They pound. Low, iron, urgent. Sound runs down stone and across the wet field, through fog like cloth being shaken out. The men in the blockade grab at pikes that sink to the haft, at rope that snaps, at tents that tilt like ships. A mule shrieks when mud climbs its belly. In that wobbling moment, when men argue with ground and lose, Francesco lifts his hand. Trumpets answer with a blunt note. Not a charge, no thunder, just a clean move. 2 columns peel off the road and slip along willow trunks, shields high, boots finding spaces the scouts chalked at dusk. They look like a seam being stitched right through the enemy's sleeve. At the carp ponds, lanterns sway. A door in the outer wall creaks. Not the great gate, but a postern no taller than 2 men, old hinges fed with oil and prayers. From within, a chain groans. Wedges pop. The postern yawns enough for a man to pass bow first. A city baker, flour ghosting his hair, gestures with a ladle as if this were a kitchen and the night a recipe. Hurry, he hisses, before someone counts. His hands are steady. In the passage, the air is damp, stone sweating, salt sour on the tongue. Inside, a smell hits like memory. Warm crust, boiled cabbage, a smear of wine. The first squad rushes to the gatehouse to seize the winch and bar. The second climbs the wall, stares 2 at a time, boots thudding in a rhythm that turns nervous windings into metronome. A guard blinks and reaches, but a sergeant catches his wrist, whispers, "For Milan," and takes the keys clean. Down below, the flood does its dull work, chewing pegs, eating fire pits, turning a proud camp into a framed painting gone soft in rain. Francesco walks, not runs, under the portcullis as it rises. a black grill of teeth going up, a mouth learning to smile again. The first thing he does is not shout. He puts both palms against the cold wood of the gate and feels the tremor inside it. The old strain, the new lift. Cities talk through timber. This one says, I am tired, I am ready. Open, he says, the word he spoke in his head 50 times today, and the gate obeys. People flow to edges as water does. Shoulders press. Eyes shine like coins. A woman with ash on her sleeve laughs once and bites her knuckle to stop it. A boy trots beside a cart and counts sacks aloud. 1, 2, 3. As if saying the numbers will keep them from vanishing. The first wagon in carries flour, the second salt, the third bundles of dried peas and onions tied up with twine. Francesco lifts a sack himself, sets it where all can see. Bread first, he says, and it becomes a rule without parchment. Bianca's emissary, hairpin tight, dress plain as a vow, steps forward with a list. District by district, she tells him. If we pour into one bowl, the others will starve. He nods. The ledger is the map of mercy. He finds Bianca not in a hall of tapestries, but in a courtyard black with wet brick, standing by an empty fountain. Her cloak is the colour of walnut. Shells, her face set in the way of someone who has thought herself through fear and come out where action lives. You made the river work, she says, not as praise but as proof. He bows a small bow that says, you made the city work. Their talk is quick, clipped, exact. Guard rotations, millstones, priests who will ring bells at the right hours. The E.G. Smith who must fix the broken hinge on the northern sally door before a rumour notices. Also, Bianca adds, eyes flicking to the crowd, pay someone to sweep. Dirt tells stories. Let it tell the right one. A child tries to sneak under a mule's belly to touch the gleam of a bit. A lancer, scar like a string on his cheek, stoops and lets the boy tap the metal with a fingernail. Hear that, he says. That's food ringing. The boy laughs the thin laugh of a body that has not laughed in days. On a balcony above, a thin-lipped merchant watches, hands like folded pigeons. He calculates without moving his lips, prices, risks, the weight of a name. When he nods, it is to himself. He will open his shutters tomorrow. By noon, smoke lifts from bakery ovens like flags. The first loaves come out too pale, then too dark, hands relearning heat with hunger's hurry. A line forms. It looks like a rope thrown through the street to hold it together. Francesco orders soldiers to stand guard, not with swords out, but with empty hands, palms open. Show them, he tells his captain, that strength is closed only when it must be. The captain, a man who carries his dead brother's rosary in his purse, nods and does it. Letters run like water now. Guildheads sign the promise to hold for 3 months. The priest from San Lorenzo blesses barrels with a slow circle of his palm and a choked thank you that makes even a jesting archer look at his boots. In a narrow kitchen, a widow dices onions and tells a soldier, you'll eat with us. He says no. She says, you'll eat with us, again, and he does. Steam kisses the cold out of his beard, but a siege is not undone by one bright morning. Mud still waits outside. Contracts still leer in candlelight. At dusk, a rumour slides, under the door like smoke. A rival captain close by has a heavier purse and an older grudge, and he carries a contract sealed by a prince who loves betrayal for its Polish. A boy with ink-stained fingers hears the name whispered and sprints for the castello, feet drumming like a small drum of alarms. He trips on a loose cobble, skins his knee, keeps going, a dark comma of blood marking the sentence of the street. In the great room that is not yet great again, plaster cracked, a fresco veiled by soot, Francesco sits with ledgers and a cup of something that once was wine. Bianca stands, because sitting would be surrender to fatigue. The boy stumbles in, blurts the name and holds out a sheet crusted with wax and mud. It stinks of haste and damp leather. Francesco breaks the seal and reads the neat threats. He smiles without humour. They think I am still for hire, he says softly, as if testing how the words fit his mouth now. He looks at the map, at the shallow river tooth he pulled in the night, at the lanes that curve like questions. We will answer, he says. He does not say how yet. A bell coughs twice from the north tower. A horse stamps, wind noses the shutters. Somewhere, far out in the fog, a horn blows an uncertain note. Francesco stays very still, the letter open on his knee. The candle trembles. The wax sighs. He has read many threats, some written in Latin, some in the language of hunger, but this one bears the breath of personal spite. A rival captain offers the same service for less gold, backed by princes who measure loyalty like grain. The ink smells of gall. The words are cold and perfect. Your contract ends with dawn. He looks at Bianca. They mean to take not just the city, he says quietly, but the faith we've begun to plant. She studies him, her hands folded in her sleeves. Then plant deeper, she replies. Plant where they can't reach. Her voice doesn't rise. It cuts through the smoky air like a needle through cloth. Outside, a thunder of hooves. Scouts return, cloaks stiff with frost. They're moving by the canal, one gasps. 500 men, maybe more. They carry no torches. Francesco stands. No torches means they trust the moon. We'll give them clouds. He calls for messengers, not drummers. Drums are for show, whispers for war. Orders pass like sparks along a fuse. Dam the canal, scatter straw soaked in oil, prepare the bridge. When the first raiders cross, they see a dark plain breathing mist. They do not see the glimmer of oil on water until torches bloom from the city walls. Fire spills like a waking serpent, orange reflected in 1,000 puddles. The sound is not roar but hiss, soft, steady, endless. Horses rear, men slip. Francesco watches from the parapet, his eyes half shadowed by helm and thought. War, he murmurs, is work done with rhythm. By dawn, the canal has turned from mirror to graveyard. The surviving attackers crawl back toward the hills. Inside the city, silence holds for a moment longer than fear. Then people begin to breathe again. Somewhere, an old woman hums the tune. Soldiers marched to when they arrived. Same melody, new meaning. Bianca meets him by the gate. You bought us another season, she says, and a name worth repeating. He nods once. Then we'll need walls worth defending. Already he sees it. The Castello not as a fortress alone, but as a heart that pumps through canals and counting houses, schools and mills, iron and silk, strength and grace, woven until they are the same. That night, he writes in his own hand, no more contracts. We serve Milan itself. He seals it, not with wax, but with a piece of silk torn from the banner mended weeks ago. It smells faintly of smoke. Outside, the fog rolls east. Somewhere beyond, another prince wakes, another plot stirs, another hand hovers over parchment. But Milan sleeps fed, the gates locked, the ovens warm. For now, the mercenary has become a builder. For now, the city breathes in rhythm with its new master's heart. And above the Castello, the bell that once called soldiers now calls bakers to dawn. Its echo rolls across rooftops, down into courtyards, and beyond the fields. An iron voice wrapped in silk. The Duke's bargain. The rain turns the city into parchment, softening edges, making ink run. In the great chapel where dukes were blessed and buried, the roof leaks in 3 places, and each drip counts a different kind of time. Water time, prayer time, and the hunger time that keeps kneeling backs stiff. Bianca Maria stands beneath a patched canopy, hands wrapped around each other as if they were a single thought. Her veil smells faintly of wet wool and rosemary. Outside, carts grind up the slope toward the Castello with limestone, wheat and rumour. Inside, a notary warms his fingers at a brazier and opens a ledger the size of a small door. The city must choose a keeper, he intones. but the words carry less power than the drip, drip, drip. Francesco enters with mud on his boots and calm in his eyes. The calm is not a performance. It is a craft hammered into him by years of late pay and early danger. He bows only once, toward the altar, and toward the woman who is now the hinge on which Milan swings. They have spoken as allies and written as conspirators. Today, they will speak as makers of a new thing. Your men can win mornings, the notary says, peering over iron spectacles. But a duke must win years. He places a quill, then another, then a third, like a small army. Titles, revenues, oaths, these are your walls. Francesco looks past the quills to Bianca. She meets his look and adds, and bread. Bread is a law that needs no signatures. Witnesses hover. A thin merchant with hands like spider legs. A stonemason whose shoulders make the air look narrow. A priest holding a folded letter from Rome like a live bird. They will carry what happens here out into the streets, into the forges and bakehouses and counting rooms where a city votes without ballots, in the small repeating motions that make days. Bianca speaks first. Milan is a loom, she says. It needs a steady hand on the shuttle. She does not say Sforza yet. She does not say Duke. She says what the city will hear. Loom, hand, steady. Her voice is low. My father's line falters. If you seek a blood pledge alone, you will have a ghost on a throne. If you seek a worker's vow, you may yet have a city that feeds itself and breaks no oath. Francesco answers with the simplest sentence he owns. I will guard what we build. A promise has to be small enough to carry. Then, softer. No more contracts that end at dawn. The priest shifts. The merchant's gaze sharpens, calculating the difference between a man who can be bought and one who must be partnered. The notary's quill licks the page. Marriage, then, to bind house to house, and the signoria to hold the city like a basin holds water. The words gather around the brazier like moths. Francesco feels their heat and their danger. He has worn other men's colours. He has rented out his courage. He looks to the stone, to the damp seam where wall meets floor, to the hairline crack in the pillar, to the patch of tiles a mason mended so cleverly you must kneel to see the line. Make it strong, he says, not to the notary, not even to Bianca, but to the room, to the city listening through stone. Make it plain and strong. Bianca's hand moves once inside her sleeve. When it emerges, it holds a ring of worked iron, not gold. For the oath, she says, gold is for show. Iron remembers. The ring fits his finger like a decision that had been waiting for skin. Somewhere, someone coughs. Somewhere, a child outside drops a pail and laughs when it rolls. The bargain spreads outward, ripple by ripple. The mason whispers to his apprentice, we will be paid in coin and in order. The merchant murmurs to the notary, with predictable tariffs, I can risk a second ship. The priest touches the iron ring lightly, so lightly that the touch is almost a prayer, and says, then the poor must be first at the ovens for 14 days. Bianca nods immediately. 21, she says, and the notary writes the number as if engraving it on a lintel. In a side chamber, the air is warmer, the floor scuffed by generations of hurry. Here they move to the bones of rule. Walls, Francesco says, and the mason lifts his chin. Less ornament, more angle. Make the gatehouse bite. Let the towers look like work. His hand sketches a line in the air, right-angled, blunt as a knuckle. And moats, Bianca adds. Water that can be summoned or dismissed. The priest blinks. Dismissed? Dams, she answers, and sluices. Let prayer meet iron nails and pins. Servants carry in bread torn into honest halves and bowls of chickpeas bruised with garlic. They eat standing, talking as they chew, building a city between mouthfuls. An old widow, wrapped in a shawl that carries the perfume of wood smoke, steps in with a tray of steaming chestnuts for those at the door. For luck, she says, but her eyes say, for witness. Francesco takes a chestnut, burns his fingers, and grins at the sharp pain. This, he thinks, I can trust. Heat that tells the truth. Outside, the bells ring noon, then ring again. Not an hour, but a message. The sound tumbles across piazzas, over the dark slash of the Naviglio, across bridges where children toss stones to see who can make the most circles. In the artisan's quarter, a tanner lifts his head. We will have a duke, he says, almost surprised. Or something like one that works. In a shuttered room, 3 men sealing a French letter pause, listen, and fold the paper more carefully. as if it might bruise. Afternoon brings eyes. Ambassadors step from under damp cloaks, smelling of horse and sharp foreign spice. One touches a ring like a tiny crown on his finger and says in smooth Italian, "Our king honors strength when it grows from law." Another, courtly as a silver spoon, murmurs, "And law is sweetest when it sits under a crown we recognize." Their smiles are good steel, polished, hard. Bianca meets them, face serene, and offers wine diluted with water, so they must drink more to drink equal. "You will have letters," she promises. "You will have the book of our tariffs, rewritten and clean." Francesco watches how she speaks with air and numbers, how she can place a rival gently where she wants him, without a hand ever lifting. He has seen cavalry turn on a field. This is the same motion in silk. At dusk, they step out into a courtyard washed clean by rain. Oil lamps swing on iron hooks. Their small flames make their own weathers. A warmth that does not travel far. A circle you must step into to feel. Bianca and Francesco walk side by side. Words fail them both. Briefly, not from absence, but from fullness. The city smells of wet brick and fennel, of iron filings and yeast. Somewhere a lute tries a scale. The sky bruises from grey to the blue that hides black inside it. A boy with ink-stained fingers, the same boy who ran messages in the siege, waits at the postern. He has grown by a hand's breadth, and his eyes have the fast shine of those who see too much. He offers a sealed packet tied with 3 threads. "From Cremona," he whispers. "From the count who dislikes paying taxes to ghosts." Bianca takes it, weighing not the paper, but the plot. Francesco watches her face change as she reads. Small shifts, like light moving underwater. She looks up. "They will test us," she says simply. "With coin first, with spears after, from the east." A bell that is not Milan's rolls a far note across the damp fields. Foreign, patient. The kind of sound that says, "We are coming when we like." Bianca closes her hand around the letter until paper crackles. "Then let them find a city awake," she says. Above the courtyard, water still falls in 3 slow drips through the chapel roof, and in a narrow street beyond, a shutter opens, then shuts, as if an unseen eye has just decided what it will do. The moon lingers over Milan like a coin half buried in ash. Below it, the castello glows with new torches, their smoke trailing thin and white into the mist. In the square, voices rise, a mix of applause, argument, and wonder. The city has not slept. It is the night of proclamation, when a mercenary captain becomes something else. Inside the great hall, plaster dust still powders the air. The tapestries smell faintly of mildew and candle wax. They were unrolled from storage only hours ago. Courtiers shuffle, uncertain whether to bow, salute, or simply stand and watch. On the dais, Bianca Maria Visconti and Francesco Sforza share one small glance that binds what paper cannot. Duty turned into covenant. The herald steps forward, his scroll trembling slightly in his hands. "By the will of God and of Milan's people," he begins, "we proclaim Francesco Sforza, Duke of Milan, protector of the city, guardian of its peace." The words roll, formal and fragile, but outside the walls, the crowd answers with something rougher, louder, more real. A shout of relief. After famine, after siege, after endless bargaining and betrayal, the city at last names a heart. Francesco bows, but his eyes are not on the lords before him. They are on the masons at the edges of the square, the men with mortar still on their sleeves. He knows who will hold this new power upright. "We will build," he says, voice low, carrying across stone. "We will feed first, then fortify." Later that night, the air smells of lime, smoke, and hope. In the kitchens, bakers knead through midnight. The first new loaves of the Sforza rule rise beneath fire that hisses like applause. On the northern gate, a guard leans to a comrade and says, "The man fights the way he mends, bit by bit, until nothing leaks. Yet every gain carries a shadow." In a side chamber of the castello, Bianca spreads letters across a table. France, Venice, Florence, all watching. Some offer congratulations that feel like hands measuring the neck of a future rival. One letter ends with the words, "A duke made of iron may rust. A duchess made of light may burn." She reads it twice, then folds it away. Francesco enters quietly, still in armor. They smell blood, he says. They always do, she answers. So we'll make them smell bread instead. He studies her for a long moment, then nods. Tomorrow we send word to Florence. Not for friendship, for balance. She smiles faintly. Balance, she repeats. The hardest thing to build. And so begins the second life of Milan. Not as a battleground, but as a workshop of order. Quarries reopen. Canals fill. The hammer becomes the city's metronome. The Sforza banner rises, a black serpent on silver. And with it, the idea that power can be shaped, measured, and repaired. But even in triumph, there's a tremor. Far north, in a French court heavy with perfume and gossip, a man in silk leans close to another and whispers, "A soldier has taken Milan. Soldiers can be unmade." And back in the castello, as dawn bleeds through narrow windows, Bianca Maria writes in her ledger, "We are only as safe as our next harvest." The ink gleams like a blade in the light. Outside, the rain begins again, soft as secrets. The days that follow are full of stone dust and ceremony. The city has never known such noise without war. Hammers beat time on scaffolds. Wooden cranes creak above courtyards where pigeons wheel like drifting ash. Men shout measurements. Boys chase sparks with sticks. Every street seems to be half built, half dreaming. Francesco walks through it all as if through the ribs of a great beast being stitched together. He stops to watch masons work, to ask how the mortar holds. They answer with the dry respect of craftsmen, direct, without flattery. He listens. "No stone stays true," one says, wiping grit from his beard. "You must keep reminding it." Francesco nods. "Then so must we." Bianca watches from the loggia. She loves these days most. The ones that smell of wet earth and lime. She knows letters can lie, but buildings tell the truth. From her desk, she sends notes to every guild in the city. Payment for work rendered will arrive weekly, not yearly. Bread will be bought before bronze. Pride after roofs. Each decree stamped in red wax carries her scent of ink and lavender. Still, the weight of power settles unevenly. Old nobles whisper that Milan is ruled by a woman's patience and a soldier's will, and both, they say, are dangerous. A Visconti cousin writes to Florence, "The Duchess holds her husband like a rein. When she smiles, he turns." In taverns, men argue whether that is a blessing or a curse. One evening, after a council that lasted too long, Francesco finds Bianca still bent over her ledgers, lamplight gilding the curve of her neck. He sets down his gloves. "You trust these books more than me." She looks up, eyes rimmed with fatigue but sharp. "The books don't bleed when I cut them." He smiles, slow, understanding. "And yet they are alive. They dine late, bread, olives, wine thin as ink." Outside, thunder rolls along the Lombard plain. She tells him of merchants from the north who refuse Sforza coin until it bears a papal seal. He tells her of soldiers restless in their barracks, waiting for someone to call their loyalty into question. "They fear idleness more than death," he says. "Then give them labour," she answers. "Build canals, not battles." And so begins one of Milan's strangest campaigns, the digging of the Navigli. Engineers in doublets wade knee-deep in clay. Peasants trade shovels for wages steadier than any harvest. The air fills with the slap of spades and the smell of raw water. Leonardo da Vinci will one day sketch their channels finer, but for now, they are trenches of hope, carved by men who have forgotten the sound of drums. Francesco visits often, boots caked in the same mud as his workers. A child hands him a reed whistle. "So you remember the wind," she says shyly. He tucks it into his belt. At night, by candlelight, Bianca writes again to Florence, to Rome, to Venice. Her words are measured, neither flattery nor threat. "Milan is stable," she assures them. "Trade grows. The fields return. We are not your enemy, unless you make us one." Her messenger leaves before dawn, hoofbeats echoing through streets that still steam from the previous day's rain. Weeks pass. The canals fill. The markets hum again, but peace never rests long in Italy. From the west, word arrives of a French envoy travelling with priests and gold, seeking to buy allegiance from Milan's neighbours. The letter reaches the castello during evening prayers. Bianca reads it once, folds it, and sets it between 2 pages of her Bible. When Francesco joins her, she says only, "They come dressed as friends." He nods. "Then we will meet them as hosts." The next day the court fills with silks and swords. The French envoy bows too low, his smile as polished as his boots. "His Majesty," he begins, "recognizes in Duke Sforza the virtues of his forebears, strength, prudence, loyalty to the peace of Christendom." He pauses. He also recognizes opportunity. Bianca's fingers tighten on her fan. And Milan recognizes flattery when it wears perfume, she says sweetly. Francesco steps forward. Tell your king Milan needs no guardian. Tell him the city feeds itself now. The envoy hesitates, then bows again. As you wish. Yet even strong hands need friends. Gold travels faster than armies. Francesco's smile is small and hard. So does honor. The envoy departs that evening, his carriage wheels hissing through puddles. In the courtyard, the same child who gave the Duke her whistle whispers to another. He left without bread. That night, Bianca stands at the highest window of the castello, watching torchlight drift along the canal like fireflies. We have built a machine, she says softly. Now we must learn to live inside it. Francesco joins her, wrapping her cloak tighter against the chill. And if it breaks? Then we build again, she answers. Below them, the bells of Milan strike midnight, clear, confident, unafraid. Yet in the silence that follows, there's a faint echo, distant and uncertain, as if another bell, far away, is answering back. The storm is not gone. It is circling. Workshop of miracles, the morning opens like a shutter. In the courtyard of the castello, apprentices sweep sawdust into tidy constellations, and the air tastes of iron filings and boiled glue. Milan has a new sound. Not trumpets, not bells, but the patient click of calipers finding a measure. Ludovico Sforza, il Moro, walks beneath a trellis of scaffolding with the gait of a man who wants the city to think before it breathes. His cloak is dark as a raven's back. His gloves shine with oil from machines he is not supposed to touch but always does. He loves the smell, linseed and lampblack, because it suggests control. If we can draw it, he tells a secretary, we can bend it. News hovers at the edges of every room. A Florentine painter and engineer has arrived with a portfolio that opens like a trapdoor in the floor of the mind. He comes quietly, tall and wiry, with eyes that take in both a hinge and the horizon. His hair is a soft dark cloud. His clothes are plain, ink-flecked. He carries a lyre curved like a silver leaf, and a bundle of drawings bound in twine. When the steward bows, the man bows back without wasting motion. Maestro Leonardo, says Ludovico, the vowels polished, the title half gift, half test. Milan is a workshop that needs a master. He guides the visitor past a table piled with bolts and gears. What can you make sing? Leonardo rests his fingertips on the wood as if it were a patient's wrist. Water, he answers. Let us make water sing. He unties the twine and spreads sheets on the table, canals marching like sentences, locks that bite and release, floodgates that lift with a finger's force, arches gathered like folded wings. A clerk leans closer and forgets to breathe. Ludovico's eyes glitter. And music? He asks lightly. Leonardo smiles. Music is the sound of mathematics, forgiving us. The court gathers in the Sala del Tesoro, where the walls are cool and the windows narrow, like disciplined eyes. A draught moves the candle flames as if some unseen hand were counting. Leonardo presents himself without flourish, reading from a letter as if the future were already written. I have designs for bridges very light and strong, for draining inundated lands, for catapults, mangonels, and other instruments of marvelous efficacy. And also, in painting and sculpture, I can do as much as any man. The room shifts, dazzled and wary. Ludovico tilts his head. Begin with water, he says softly. Will we already speak? Bianca Maria, older now, a gravity in her poise, appraises the man with the measuring gaze of one who has hired both mercenaries and millers. Begin where the city thirsts, she agrees. The Navigli wake to new lines. Surveyors ride out with poles and cords. Apprentices mark sightlines with chalk. Bargemen, suspicious and practical, run palms over lock gates as if testing a horse's teeth. Leonardo walks the banks in soft-soled shoes, talking to the canal like an old friend he has not seen since childhood. We will take a finger of you here and give it back there, he murmurs, and his hand sketches arcs that only he can see. He kneels to watch how water curls around a stone and then rises laughing when a solution clicks into place. A wedge of air, he says to the baffled clerk. A pocket that lets the gate lift, so. He draws. Quick, sure, the quill a black swallow in flight, in a long, high room inside the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie. A refectory waits with its back wall blank as a held breath. Sunlight comes thin and honest through the high windows. Plates clink. A sister coughs. A lay brother rubs a stain from wood and fails. Leonardo paces the length, counting steps, mapping silence. A supper, he says. A time with edges. He chalks a table that is both a plank and a stage, then threads figures along it. Hands opening, hands clutching, hands asking. His disciples lean in, heads tilted as if eavesdropping on tomorrow. Bread breaks in powder-dry bursts. Wine pools like heart blood. We will make them breathe, he tells his assistant. We will make the room a lung. He grinds pigments like a miller grinds meaning from wheat. Azurite, saffron, soot. In the mortar, colours groan. He experiments with a tempera that dries too fast, then too slow, with an oil that promises a glow like wet stone. The friars watch, puzzled but indulgent. A man is at work, and work earns patience. A bee finds the window's corner and hums a tiny psalm. The lay brother returns, rubs the same stain, and fails again. A stain is a story, Leonardo says kindly, not looking up. Leave it. It tells the wall not to pretend. The city learns his rhythms. Mornings, he haunts the canal works, sleeves rolled, sketching lock teeth, calculating the sullen tantrums of water. Afternoons, he vanishes into the refectory and speaks to silence with a brush. Evenings, music, the lyre gently dying and returning as if breath had strings. Ludovico comes sometimes, a shadow among even shadows, and stands without speaking until he cannot bear it, then asks, "Will it be miraculous?" Leonardo's smile twitches. Miracles are what we call our failure to pay attention. This will be plain, and we will look until the plain burns. In the metalworks by the Porta Vercellina, fires bloom like captive suns. A sculptor named Zanio judges a mould with a thump of his knuckles, the same sound a baker uses for bread. Apprentices carry ladles heavy with molten bronze. Sparks rise, drift, die. Ludovico wants a monument, a horse vast as a small ship, Sforza cast in victory upon it. Leonardo visits with a sketchbook where horses run in charcoal, their muscles like ropes in rain. He studies real horses, how they blow steam, how they place a hoof, how fear ripples them, and his lines learn to breathe. He builds a clay colossus stubborn as a mountain. Men stop to stare and swear softly. A boy reaches out to touch the flank and pulls his hand back faster than he meant. "It's only clay," his father whispers. "How did it make you afraid?" "Melt the cannon." Ludovico laughs one night, wine generous in him. "Pour it into the horse." Courtiers chuckle. Leonardo, who does not mind laughter when it stands upright, simply nods. "I can cast it," he says. "But would you rather the bronze be a steed forever or fire just once?" The room sobers. The question hangs like a dark lantern, illuminating, dangerous. Letters cross the Po and the Alps. Venice hawks for advantage. Florence sniffs. France circles like a wolf whose paws make no sound. "We shine," Ludovico tells Bianca, "and shining draws moths." She answers, "Then let us be glass that is also a mirror." She writes tariffs and timetables. He writes invitations to poets and mathematicians. Milan becomes a grammar in which art and engineering conjugate. "I build, you paint," he calculates, "we prosper." One damp winter afternoon, Leonardo returns to the refectory and finds a hairline crack in the paint where an apostle's sleeve folds into shadow. He rests his forehead to the wall and whispers, almost wry, "So you begin to die as you are born." The friar beside him is alarmed. "Die?" Leonardo lifts a hand. "Paint has its own life. It wakes, it ages. Our task is to make aging beautiful." He adjusts the mixture, adds a breath of walnut oil, rubs the plaster, as a physician rubs a chest to call lungs to courage. He works until the light fails and the room is a held breath again. Night brings rumours like burrs on a cloak. A French captain asks price for loyalty near Como. A banker in Cremona delays a payment and smiles. A poet writes a line too sweet by half about Ludovico's star. Meanwhile, on the canal, a new lock lowers and rises smooth as a hand at prayer. Barges slide with barley, wool, and whispered hope. At the far edge of the city, a bell that does not belong to any church rings once, hollow, brazen, as if struck by a hand that meant offence rather than announcement. Two sentries glance at each other, say nothing, and tighten their grips on spears that have not forgotten how to be necessary. Leonardo freezes mid-stroke, listening. He sets down his brush slowly, like a man putting away a knife he will need again. The next day, a rainstorm sweeps in from the northwest, fine, silvery, relentless. Milan's roofs weep into gutters built by the same hands that once lifted Pikes. In the Castello courtyard, water gathers around half-built engines and forgotten scaffolds, reflecting a sky like molten lead. Leonardo walks through it bareheaded, cloak dark with rain. Each droplet seems to sharpen him, not dull him. He carries a small notebook, edges curled from constant use. The pages armoured in sketches, bridges, wings, locks, faces half-formed. He stops beneath an archway, where an apprentice has set a clay model to dry. The face is crude, the eyes too large. Leonardo studies it a moment, then presses a finger into the wet clay, carving a shadow where none existed. Now it lives, he says, almost kindly. When you add flaw, you add breath. The apprentice blinks, as if seeing both miracle and reprimand in the same gesture. Inside, Ludovico il Moro watches rain stripe the windows like a painter's tears. He is restless, hungry for monuments that might outlast rumour. Milan must speak louder than Florence, he mutters to his advisor. Their dome sings, our horse must roar. He imagines bronze cast in one paw, an act of defiance against the elements themselves. If God gives me peace, he says, I will give him a statue. But God is not listening. The French press southward. Venice sharpens its quills into swords. Bianca Maria, now grey at the temples, sends warnings in letters sealed in wax the colour of dusk. Keep your machines ready, she writes to her son. Keep your artists close. Both can save you when armies cannot. Ludovico folds the letter into his sleeve, feeling the words against his wrist like a pulse. Leonardo's studio glows with lamplight. The horse looms, massive, magnificent, half-finished, its flanks catching gold from the fire. Apprentices move around it like moths around a planet. You will never pour it, one dares to whisper. Leonardo overhears and smiles. Perhaps, he says, but even an uncast dream can pull the future toward it. He spends nights drawing machines that no one has asked for. Flying gears, self-turning mills, a city raised on 2 levels. One for trade, one for clean air. He sketches battle carts shaped like shells, then turns the page and draws lilies instead. His mind oscillates between destruction and grace, the twin currencies of his century. Meanwhile, Ludovico cultivates power as if it were an orchard, tended, pruned, poisoned where necessary. In the great hall, he hosts feasts where poets read verses on geometry and jesters mock theology. The air smells of cinnamon and ambition. He keeps Beatrice d'Este by his side, a duchess whose laughter is a kind of weapon, bright, precise, unforgettable. Leonardo paints her once, twice, always failing to finish. Perfection, he says, is the enemy of truth. She answers, then tell the truth before the French do. When the rain finally stops, the air feels newly sharpened. Along the canal, barges drift as smooth as sentences. Merchants bless the Duke for order, priests praise him for piety. Spies report him for neither. Yet beneath the veneer of marble and music, Milan trembles. The cost of its miracles grows heavy. Gold drained from treasury, patience drained from people. A city cannot eat genius, Beatrice warns. Feed them hope, not blueprints. Leonardo kneels in the refectory one evening, alone. The light has gone. The supper on the wall glows faintly like an ember under ash. They will forget your name, he whispers to his painted Christ. But they will remember your gesture. He presses a hand to the cracked plaster. Dust sticks to his skin, like time itself refusing to let go. At the Castello gates, a courier rides hard from the north, cloak torn, boots caked in foreign mud. The guards catch him as he falls from the saddle. France, he gasps, cross the Alps, their banners, they bear lilies. Inside, Ludovico listens, eyes narrow as blade edges. Then Milan will see if miracles bleed. He summons Leonardo before dawn. The horse, he says, voice low, urgent. We melt it, bronze for cannon, not art. Leonardo hesitates only a heartbeat. Then may they fire straight, he replies. Outside, thunder rolls again, not from clouds, but from distant guns. Milan's workshop has become its armour. The machines hum louder. The canals flash under torchlight, and men move through rain carrying both tools and swords. Leonardo climbs the battlements to watch the horizon, ink still on his fingers. What we build, he murmurs, will be tested not by time, but by fire. Behind him, the Last Supper waits in the dark, each face painted in calm before ruin. The storm is close now. Poisoned honey. The feast began with a hush, a velvet pause that made every candle seem to lean forward and listen. Silver clinked once, then steadied. Beatrice d'Este moved through the hall like a small, bright comet, trailing murmurs and the perfume of crushed citrus. Outside, November pressed its cold hand against the shutters. Inside, the table shone with sugared pears and fish arranged like armoured flowers. Music climbed the stone ribs of the ceiling and disappeared into darkness. And below that beauty, under every polished plate, lay the arithmetic of war. Ludovico il Moro sat as if the chair itself were a throne wrung from chance. His smile was a blade wrapped in velvet. Courtiers watched him with the attention of sailors watching wind. At his right hand, a secretary sorted letters by touch. Parchment thin for praise, thick for debt, wax black for danger. The French envoy had returned, this time with a priest and a mathematician, the procession itself a proposition. Grace, reason, and force married to one ambition. "To Milan," the envoy announced, raising a cup. "To Milan's light." He did not say, "And to your bronze, your taxes, your sons." Beatrice's laugh broke the room's tight thread. "To appetites," she answered, tapping her knife twice against a crystal rim. "May they feed the living, not the dead." Eyes shifted. Someone smiled into a napkin. The envoy countered with courtly sweetness. "Your Grace, France comes to keep the peace that beauty requires." "Peace," Beatrice said, refilling his cup with a hand that did not tremble, "is the one thing that cannot be kept. It must be made, daily." Her glance, quick as a sparrow's wing, found Ludovico's profile. For an instant his jaw moved, thought cracking a stubborn seed. Beyond the hall, rain worked the courtyards, small hands drumming, a quiet siege. In the refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie, the supper waited with a patience that felt like prophecy. A flake had fallen from the edge of a sleeve. A crack traced a thin geography across the table's shadow. Leonardo had left his brush rinsed and ready, as if he meant to return by midnight. But the hour belonged to politics. In a small chamber behind the dais, walls hung with maps, the air green with bay leaves, seals thudded into wax. "Hold the French, bribe the Swiss, sweeten Ferrara," the secretary murmured, reading from notes that smelled of damp leather and sweat. "Delay Venice with compliments. Promise the Pope a hymn." Beatrice took the list, cut it cleanly in half. "Promises are our scarcest metal," she said. "Spend them as if every word were a coin that cannot be minted twice." Ludovico's hand rested on the table's edge, fingers steady, knuckles pale. "We will buy time," he said. "Time buys iron. Iron buys survival." His voice was soft enough to make men lean forward. "And if we cannot pay?" Beatrice asked. Her question moved through the room like smoke through keyholes. He did not look at her. "Then we will sell illusions," he said, "until reality is ready." At the city's northern gate, a night watchman heard a rhythm that was not rain. Hoofbeats wrapped in cloth, a muffled thunder. He lifted his lantern and saw nothing but the reflection of his own small flame in pooled water. Still, a memory shivered him. Last winter's horn at the edge of sound, a message carried by cold air. He tightened his cloak and spat into the dark. "Count what you can move," he muttered, a phrase his father had taught him when fire took their stable and left them a cart and one mule. He could move the bar. He did so and called for the sergeant. In the great hall the masque began. Dancers as seasons, a boy as Mercury with wings trembling on his ankles, a girl as Peace with a branch that shed green paint on her palm. Beatrice watched them with tenderness edged by calculation. Beauty could be a treaty when parchment failed. She turned to a lady beside her. "You see how the boy shakes? We will all shake by spring." A courier slipped in, clothes slapped flat by rain and fear. He waited at the edge of the feast until Beatrice's eye clicked to him like a lock taking a key. She rose without hurry and crossed the floor, the murmurs parting before her like a low tide. In the small mapped chamber, the courier's voice came in pieces. "The Lilies, banners at Como, the Swiss hire, Cremona silent, and Ferrara. Ferrara listens, but with its head tilted." Ludovico smiled without humour. A fox listening to a henhouse. He took the letter, broke the seal, read the soothing poison of French promise. Security, friendship, order. It sounded like sugar. It ate like acid. Beatrice leaned close enough for their shoulders to touch, the gesture private and public at once. "Do not answer with fear," she whispered. "Answer with engines." He understood. Not just cannon, machines of policy, locks of law, bridges of alliance. "And bread?" he asked, meaning the ledgers of grain, the hearts of citizens, the heat that keeps a city willing. "As always," she said, "bread first." They returned to the feast where sugar castles stood on plates like plausible kingdoms. Beatrice lifted a delicate tower and let the top crumble between her fingers. The envoy laughed as if at a child's game. "Sweet ruin," he said. "Practice," Beatrice replied. "For the day, we must eat our pride." After midnight, they walked the corridor to the ducal apartments, torches making a moving geometry of shadow and flame. "I am tired of honey," Beatrice said, voice low. "Tired of smiles that glaze over knives." Ludovico touched the wall, as if to ground himself in brick. "Poisoned honey keeps us alive another week," he said. "Perhaps 2. "Then we will need a different diet," she answered. Her breath made a small cloud that vanished immediately, a winter flower. In the nursery, a cradle squeaked, tiny wooden sound, mortal scale. For a moment, the world shrank to that hinge and the weight it bore. Beatrice placed a hand to the child's chest, felt the warm thrum. "Build for him," she said. "Not for the poems." Ludovico nodded once. "For him," he said, "even if poems are cheaper." At dawn, the French envoy asked to see the horse. The request was a kind of dare. In the foundry's grey light, the clay colossus loomed, haunted now by absence. The bronze that had been promised to its bones rededicated to mouths of cannon. Rain had smoothed one flank. A crack ran like an old riverbed down the neck. The envoy circled, fingers steepled, the smile of a surgeon who loves his art too much. "Magnificent," he said. "A pity you will never pour it." Ludovico's face did not move. "A pity," he agreed. "We prefer our bronze hot." The envoy's final bow tasted of sugar again. "France admires Milan's practicality." The pause was the insult. "We admire France's appetite," Beatrice returned. "It saves us from mistaking you for angels." Their eyes held, 2 blades crossing lightly with no blood drawn. Yet. As the carriage clattered away, Beatrice stood in the rain, no hood, no fear of damp in her hair. "We will have to choose," she said without looking at Ludovico, "between being eaten slowly and bitten clean." He answered with the truth only rulers tell each other in bad weather. "Perhaps we will have to choose both." In Santa Maria delle Grazie, Leonardo arrived to find the room smelling of wet stone and old bread. He looked at the supper long and hard, then set his palate and breathed once, deep and even. He added a shadow under a hand, a gleam to a tear, a small correction to the perspective that made the table tilt just a degree more toward the eye. He heard, without needing to be told, the rumour the rain had carried. Lilies at Como, Swiss with clean halberds, gold that did not sweat. "All marvels," he said to the lay brother, who brought him a coal for his brazier, "and still a sword hangs on the wall." By evening, the torches along the Navigli smeared smoke like bruises on the damp. A boy ran messages through rain, pages soaked, ink bleeding like sorrow. In the Castello, seals thudded again. Orders, bribes, invitations, veiled threats. Letters as engines. "Hold the French," the secretary said. "Trust no rumour." Yet rumour foreclosed on caution and moved in like a tenant who never pays rent. Beatrice, alone before the fire, opened her palm. In it lay a bee of worked gold, a small gift from a poet who pretended that symbols could fix reality. She closed her fist. "Sweetness draws flies," she murmured. "But I need bees that build." Far north, a bell that was not Milan's rang once, cold and bright. The sound ran the length of the Po like a knife laid against a throat. In its wake came a hush too clean to be called peace. Somewhere in that hush, a blade was being sharpened on a whetstone that had weathered 3 generations. The first cold dawn of winter comes without fanfare. The city wakes beneath a film of frost. Gutters crack, horses breathe smoke. Milan looks polished, brittle, beautiful, the kind of beauty that doesn't last the day. Inside the Castello, the air tastes of wax and ink. Beatrice d'Este stands by the window, wrapped in fur, staring toward the horizon where the French banners have been rumoured to bloom. "They will come in spring," she says, more to herself than to the secretary beside her. "Spring," he replies, "is nearer than it seems." Below them, the courtyards swarm with movement. Engineers test trebuchets like nervous doctors tapping at bones. The canals, Leonardo's veins of water, have become arteries of war. Barges carry cannon shot instead of grain. The clang of hammer on bronze echoes through every alley. "So much noise," Beatrice murmurs. "So much making." Ludovico, entering behind her, answers without irony. "Making is all that keeps us from vanishing. Letters fall like snow. one from Rome promising prayer, one from Florence offering silence, and one from Venice, the longest, full of compliments that smell of waiting. Beatrice breaks the seals herself. All of them want the same thing, she says, voice thin with exhaustion, to see which way the wind will carry our ashes. That night, the court gathers in the ducal chapel. Candles burn low. Incense curls like slow smoke. Leonardo plays the lyre, each note clear enough to wound. For a heartbeat, the air is peace itself. Beatrice closes her eyes, and the music feels like a bridge over fear. Then the doors burst open. A messenger, soaked and trembling, bows only halfway before collapsing to one knee. They've crossed the Ticino, he gasps. The music dies, mid-breath. Someone drops a cup. It rings louder than any bell. Ludovico doesn't move for a moment. When he speaks, the words are flat, practical. Call the Swiss, arm the forts, wake the city. Outside, rain begins again, thin, needling, merciless. By dawn, smoke rises from the forges, black against pale sky. Beatrice rides through the courtyard, cloak snapping, boots soaked. Bread first, she orders the stewards. Always bread. Her face, pale beneath the hood, is still a lesson in control. If they eat, they'll fight, she says. The guards salute her like a saint who happens to carry a sword. On the walls, Ludovico watches clouds gather over the fields. So this is how it ends, he murmurs. Not with a trumpet, but with mud. Leonardo joins him, silent, then gestures toward the canals. Water will buy you hours, he says. Perhaps days. I can turn the floodgates. Ludovico nods. Do it. And so, once again, water becomes the weapon of Milan. This time, not in the hands of Francesco, but of the man who paints supper for eternity. When the French arrive, they do not roar. They hum. The sound of disciplined hooves, of rain on armor. Their banners, white lilies on blue, move like ice over the field. Cannon mouths glisten like eyes. Inside the castello, Beatrice kneels at her son's cradle and whispers, "If we are ghosts by morning, remember that we built first." Then she stands and joins her husband on the wall. The first shot shakes the air. Plaster falls from the ceiling in a white sigh. Artillery, Leonardo murmurs, studying the angle. Too low, they'll waste powder. Ludovico stares. You speak of them like students. All men who measure, Leonardo replies, are students. He turns away, already thinking of improvements, of defenses that breathe. But the city groans. By nightfall, the fields are fire and mirrors. The floodgates hold for an hour, then two, then buckle. The canals overflow, swallowing bridges, turning streets into veins of silver ruin. The French hesitate at first, then adapt. Their boats slide across what was once road. Milan, the workshop, becomes a maze of drowned miracles. 3 days later, the Castello's gates open not in surrender, but in exhaustion. Beatrice is pale, unbowed. Ludovico stands beside her, armor dented, face unreadable. The French general salutes with the politeness of conquest. Your city is beautiful, he says. She was, Beatrice answers. Her voice is colder than the rain. Leonardo watches from the shadows, hands folded behind his back, as if memorizing every line for a sketch he will never make. All marvels, he whispers again, and still the sword. When the soldiers march through the gates, their boots strike rhythm on the stones Francesco once trod, the stones Bianca once blessed, the stones that still remember bread, silk, and iron. Milan does not cry. It exhales in the empty refectory. Flakes fall from the painted supper. The table tilts another inch toward ruin. The wall breathes dust. Christ's face fades a little more into the plaster, into the silence. And somewhere beyond the city walls, under the grey pulse of the sky, the bees begin their slow return to the fields. Cinders and blueprints. The ash does not rise in columns. It drifts thin as breath, settling into the seams of Milan like a quiet decision. After armies, after lilies and smoke, the city stands with wet feet and a tired heart. On the Navigli, barges bump gently, their ropes creaking like old knees. A woman lifts the lid of a dye vat. Indigo fog spills out, staining her wrists blue to the bone. Back to it, she says to no one, and to everyone, back to it. In a lane where the stones remember hooves and hymns, a boy sells nails from a canvas pouch. He learned to count during a siege, by sacks of flour, by men who didn't return, and now he counts by iron. 10 for a penny, he calls, and the sound lights up the street like a small lantern. Behind him, a mason wedges new brick into a wall cracked by cannon breath. He works slow, true. Every tap of his hammer is an argument against forgetting. Milan has learned a hard trick: to keep moving while the map changes. The French go, the Swiss arrive with halberds that flash like fish in sun, then the French return. And with them a new king who rides as if the earth itself were a trained horse. On a morning scraped thin by wind, white cloth appears on the castello. Surrender, truce, a breath between storms. The workshop goes on, ovens wake, lathes spin. The long, low rooms of the arsenal learn to sleep with both eyes open. Massimiliano Sforza is brought back into this, an air raised from collapse like a beam hauled upright after fire. He is young, careful with food and praise, and his first rides through the city feel like trying on a coat once worn by a giant. The streets watch him. They care about bread more than blood, but they look for signs. He offers coins in handfuls at market corners and swears to protect the wells. "We will tax the rich," he announces, and the rich smile with the slow mouths of men who keep their coin where laws cannot reach. He signs orders in a careful hand, learned from tutors who prized Latin above ledgers. The orders look good nailed to doors. The doors open onto rooms where wheat must be counted, and debts speak louder than trumpets. Massimiliano loves the castello at dusk, when torches turn the walls into a slow river of flame. In one room, he pauses before a map studded with pins, red for allies, black for wolves. He thinks of his grandfather's proverb, "Count what you can move." He can move tax rates, envoys, prayer hours. Soldiers, only if the coin holds. He writes to a Swiss captain with the tone of a customer ordering a cart, then signs his name too large, as if size could so shut the fear. In return, the captain sends a bill that reads like a threat. The city keeps breathing, short, careful breaths now, like a runner with cracked ribs. In the refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie, the painted supper continues its slow erosion. Damp nibbles, time exhales, flakes fall as quiet as moths. A friar with soft hands sweeps them into a box and labels it with a date, as if cataloguing the autumn of a wall could save it from winter. "We will mend it one day," he tells the novice. The novice nods, seeing both hope and lie, and believes them in equal measure. One afternoon, under a sky bright as polished tin, the city hears the rumour turn to hoofbeats. The French king, tall, theatrical, hungry, meets an army of Swiss hired by men who learned bookkeeping before war. The fight in the fields to the south is not a story of saints. It is a story of mud, iron, and the dull arithmetic of loss. From the walls, Milan listens to thunder that is not weather, smoke banks low on the horizon like a promise no one wanted. When the wind swings round, it brings the thin, bitter smell of spent powder and trampled fennel. In the evening, a rider clatters over the bridge, horse flecked with salt. "We lost the day," he says, voice cracked. But not the city. Massimiliano stands very still and nods once, as if a decision passed through him without stopping. The next morning, he meets his council in a room that still smells faintly of beeswax and wet wool. "We negotiate," he says. The word fits his mouth like a last piece in a puzzle. He signs, he seals, he bows in letters that taste like ash. When French officers step through the gate, he offers them bread before wine. "Milan feeds," he says, and the truth of it is the only crown he can wear without it cutting his brow. Years fold into each other like cloth, some light, some dark. If you stood on the Ponte dei Fabbri and counted barges, you would see patience. Grain going out, timber coming in, barrels of oil whispering past like round, sleeping beasts. In a lane behind the cathedral, a maker of locks files teeth into a key as fine as lace. He learned from a drawing left by a Florentine who rarely finished but always began truly. "Teeth," the locksmith mutters, "and faith." He sets the key down and drinks water that tastes of stone and old snow. Across from him, a girl copies numbers from a ledger into a smaller book she will carry to market. Her fingers are stained with walnut ink. Her lips move as she makes totals climb. "If the numbers are steady," she says to her mother, "I don't mind the rain." The city heals slantwise. Every repair leaves a seam. Every seam teaches a lesson. Children play at war with sticks, but their games end in bargains. A lent apple, a promise to trade marbles next week. On saints' days, bells braid the streets with sound. On other days, hammers do the braiding. Men who once marched now measure. Women who once hid bread wrap it openly, sell it warm. Watch coins return like pigeons to a square that remembers. hunger too well to trust abundance, when news comes that Massimiliano is gone, slipped out of his coat of rule like a tired boy shaken from a costume. The city neither cheers nor wails. It exhales again, that old Milanese sound that says, next. Into the breach steps Francesco II Sforza, last of the line, a man with the face of someone who knows the weight of late promises. He has the quick, wary eyes of his ancestors, and the softer mouth of one who learned in exile how to listen before speaking. He rides the same road his forebears did, past hedges cut square by patient hands, past fields that remember soldiers sleeping in furrows. He dismounts at the gate and puts his palm to the wood, the way Francesco once did, feeling the tremor of the city's stored history. Open, he says, not a command so much as a test. They open. They have always opened for those who bring order before glory. Francesco walks the rooms where candles had burned to stubs during councils that never ended on time, the rooms where maps still smell of glue and hope. He sets a new ledger on the table and weighs it down with a stone picked from the Ticino. Heavier than wax, he tells his steward. Harder to melt. His first law is bread again. His second is streets. Drains cleared, bridges walked. Every hinge in the city oiled until doors swing easy and rumour has fewer places to catch and tear. He writes to the emperor, whose shadow now lies long across Italy. The reply arrives with gold thread in its creases and a draft of duty in its ink. The terms taste of iron. Francesco wears them as one wears a heavy coat in cold wind. Uncomfortable. Necessary. We will be vassals only to the work, he says in private. And then does the math that keeps the work alive. Garrisons paid, mills rebuilt, a night watch that learns faces by lamp and touch. The workshop runs again, slower, surer. In the same refectory, the supper breathes dust. In a side street, a widow opens a new dye vat. The blue steams up like a prayer from a mouth too tired to speak. She dips a bolt of cloth and pulls it through her hands. It runs like river water, the colour of old sky. The pattern survives the thread, she tells her granddaughter. The girl nods as if she knew it already. The way children sometimes do, with truths grown-ups had to learn the hard way. On a morning cut fine by frost, Francesco II leans over the parapet and watches a barge slide under the bridge. The bargeman raises 2 fingers, not quite a salute, not quite a blessing. How many locks between here and the fields? The Duke asks the engineer beside him. 13, the man answers. 13 to hold water obedient, Francesco smiles, thin. If only men could be sluiced so. Behind them, a steward coughs politely and produces a letter tied in black ribbon. The seal is foreign, the handwriting meticulous and cool. Francesco does not open it yet. He looks at the river, one moment longer, as if the current could offer advice. Somewhere, a bell rings twice, and the wind slides along the stone like a careful knife. Shall I read it aloud, my lord? The steward asks. Francesco takes the letter at last and breaks the wax. The first line is a kind of winter. Francesco II reads the letter slowly, lips barely moving. The handwriting is beautiful, elegant, and utterly cold. It begins with courtesy, to the most serene Duke of Milan, our esteemed ally and friend, and ends with what all such letters hide in their folds. Surrender by another name. The emperor demands. Partnership. The word glows. With the false light of generosity, Francesco knows its shadow well. He closes his eyes and hears the iron footfall of history. His family's name has gone from mercenary to monarch, from builder to exile. Now it sits poised between memory and dust. He walks to the balcony. The winter sun lies pale over the city, soft as breath on glass. Below, apprentices haul planks through the square, their shouts a rhythm of survival. Milan no longer shouts of glory. It hums with endurance. The Duke watches an old woman cross the bridge carrying kindling on her back. When she pauses to rest, 2 children help her lift the bundle again. He smiles faintly. This is what remains of empire, he murmurs. Not gold, not walls, hands that still reach. In the workshops by the Porta Romana, a new generation works the miracle of repair. No Leonardo now, no patron in ermine, only men in coarse shirts, women who hum to keep time. They rebuild clocks, grind glass, mend the teeth of gears with wire. A boy writes his master's name with soot on the side of a crate. G, D, Sforza, initials standing for a line already fading. The letters smudge at the first touch. A canal dredger calls across the water, voice echoing. Hold the lock steady. His partner answers with a curse and a grin. Water rises, obedient for once. In that small success hides the genius of the city, Milan's quiet refusal to die grandly. Francesco keeps to modest chambers now. He walks the corridors by candlelight, past the cracked frescoes that once told stories of victories. He stops at a wall half washed by rain, where faint figures linger, soldiers, saints, maybe both. Erase nothing, he tells his steward. Even the stains remind us we were alive. The steward nods, not sure if it is command or confession. At night, the Duke writes. Not decrees, but notes, ideas for fairer tax ledgers, sketches of an irrigation wheel he saw in a peasant's field, lists of men who might be trusted with bread rather than swords. He seals none of them. When asked why, he says, "They are not orders yet, only thoughts. A man must think before history forgets him." One spring morning, a messenger from Venice brings word that the emperor will soon arrive to inspect his loyal city. Francesco feels the words land like frost on a seedling. Loyal. He had hoped to be necessary, not loyal. Still, the streets must look proud. He orders banners washed, gates mended, fountains cleaned. Painters hurry to retouch the saints whose eyes had dimmed with soot. As they work, children chase scraps of gold leaf through the courtyard, laughing, their laughter too bright for politics. The emperor's procession enters through the Porta Ticinese, banners of black and gold, drums heavy as thunder, the air thick with foreign tongues. Francesco greets him at the Castello steps with the dignity of a man who knows how to bow without bending his will. The emperor looks past him at the walls, the people, the canals that still run like veins of tempered silver. "Your city endures," he says, Francesco answers. "We build faster than time can burn." For a moment, the emperor's face softens. "You Sforzas were always builders," he says. Then, turning toward his retinue, he adds, "And every builder serves an architect." Francesco nods, understanding perfectly. The architect is not in Milan. That night, while the imperial camp feasts, Francesco walks the dark alleys of his city. A millstone turns by candlelight. A weaver sings low over her loom. From a window comes the smell of soup. He stands in the doorway of a workshop, where a young artisan etches lines onto copper for a new lock design. "Good work," he says. The boy looks up, startled to see his duke in plain cloak. "Not good yet. My lord, just begun." Francesco smiles. "Then it is already better than most things finished." Months pass. The emperor moves on. Milan sighs back into itself, smaller but freer. Francesco grows thinner, quieter. He spends more time near the canals, watching light travel on water, as if carrying messages from lost ages. One afternoon, he kneels to drink, tasting the metal tang that has flavoured Milan since the first forge was lit. He remembers his father's hands, the way they folded around a pen instead of a sword. The ink, dark as blood. When he stands, he leaves behind a reflection that wavers and then steadies, his face and behind it, the faint echo of every Sforza who ever watched water move and called it progress. Years later, when he is gone, the Castello changes hands again. Officials from foreign courts walk its halls, measuring, taxing, renaming. Yet they keep the locks Leonardo designed, the bridges Francesco repaired, the sluices Bianca ordered built. The city's bones remember the language of function, even when rulers forget their lines. A clerk in a distant century opens an old ledger and finds a page marked with water stains shaped like wings. The ink is faded, the handwriting patient. It reads, "Build for what outlives you," no signature, but the letters, thick, deliberate, human, carry the scent of iron and rain. On an evening many lifetimes later, when the bells of Milan toll not for war but for workday's end, the city glows with another kind of machine, trams, glass, electricity humming like thought. Yet under the asphalt lie the same canals, the same bones, the same stubborn rhythm of making and remaking. The names on the gates have changed. The light in the refectory still falls on a supper that refuses to die completely. And if you walk by the water at dusk, when the air tastes of flour and rust, you may feel it, the old heart, still turning. The House of Sforza is gone, but the machine they built, the idea that craft can be salvation, that a city can think itself into survival, endures. Every hinge, every arch, every drop of water that bends to human patience is their echo. The wind moves through the alleys like a whisper of silk across armor. The city listens and builds. Still, the light over Milan is different now. It is not the gold of kings or the red of banners. It is the silver of morning, quiet, patient, deliberate. The kind of light that makes dust look holy. The camera drifts above the castello, its bricks soft with centuries. Voices echo faintly, hammer strikes, laughter. The clink of glass from a shop that has opened since dawn. A canal glides beneath, mirroring the sky so perfectly it seems the city floats twice. Once in stone, once in reflection, you can almost hear them. Ghosts at work. Francesco, counting sacks of grain. Bianca, writing letters with calm precision. Ludovico, pacing among blueprints and brass. Beatrice, smiling beneath torchlight, aware that every smile costs something. And Leonardo, standing before a wall that crumbles even as it endures, whispering to the silence, "Look long enough, and even ruin reveals design." Milan breathes through them still, through the arches they raised, through the canals that pulse like arteries under glass towers, through the patience of a people who have learned that progress is not a march, it is a heartbeat. Steady and stubborn, history seldom keeps its promises, but it keeps its echoes. The House of Sforza was born from mercenary hands and dreams too heavy to carry, yet they left behind a machine that outlived its masters, a city that builds itself again and again, out of skill, out of hunger, out of the faith that work itself is a kind of prayer. The camera rises higher now. Rooftops fade into a grid of light. The cathedral gleams. Marble. Sky and memory fused. A single bell rings, not for war, not for mourning, but for time itself. And in that sound, clear, slow, eternal, Milan remembers what the Sforzas taught it, that even when power burns to cinders, design remains. Blueprints survive the fire. Hands find new work, and the city endures.